chosen one. While other children bounced off emotional walls, you walked straight through them, absorbing family secrets whispered behind closed doors, feeling your parents' unspoken pain, carrying wounds that were never yours to bear. They called you too sensitive and told you to build thicker skin, but what they labeled as weakness was actually your divine equipment, being calibrated for the most critical mission of your lifetime, to reach a soul drowning in billions, yet starving for purpose, someone whose silent cry for meaning only your specially tuned spirit could hear. School was torture, not because of grades or social status, but because you felt everything happening in every corner of every classroom. The shy kid being ignored, the popular kid's secret insecurities, the teacher's frustration, the janitor's loneliness, all of it flowed through you like a river of emotions that never stopped. The workplace became a battlefield. Small talk felt like sandpaper against your soul. Surface conversations about weather and weekend plans drained you completely, while others seemed energized by the meaningless chatter. You found yourself avoiding social gatherings, not because you didn't like people, but because everything felt so intense. You started questioning yourself. You tried every solution: therapy, meditation, setting boundaries, even numbing yourself with alcohol, workaholism, endless scrolling through your phone. Nothing fully explained why you operated on a frequency that others couldn't hear. Therapists called it anxiety. Doctors suggested medication. Friends told you to just let it go. You wondered if there was something written on your forehead that said, "Dump your trauma here." You attracted wounded people like a magnet attracts metal. They found you at parties, in coffee shops, on airplanes, in waiting rooms. They told you things they'd never told their closest friends, and you listened because something in you couldn't turn away. The isolation grew. You began avoiding situations that overwhelmed you, which meant avoiding most social interactions. You felt like an alien trying to understand human behavior while carrying the weight of everyone else's unspoken suffering. Movie theaters became overwhelming because you felt the emotions of every person in the room. Restaurants were exhausting because you picked up on every conversation, every tension, every moment of joy or sadness happening around you. Shopping malls were like walking through emotional minefields. Churches should have been peaceful, but instead you felt the collective pain, doubt, and spiritual hunger of every person in the congregation. Even nature walks weren't safe because you'd encounter other hikers and immediately sense their internal struggles. You tried to explain it to people close to you, but they looked at you like you were making it up. "You're just being dramatic," they said. "Everyone has feelings." They didn't understand that you weren't just having feelings. You were experiencing everyone else's feelings as if they were your own. There came a breaking point when you thought, "I can't keep living like this." The constant emotional bombardment, the exhaustion, the feeling of being different, it all felt too much to bear. You considered the possibility that you were losing your mind, that this level of sensitivity wasn't normal, that maybe you needed serious help. You researched every explanation you could find. Highly sensitive person, empath, intuitive, psychic. None of these labels felt quite right, though they came closer than anything the medical community offered. You read books, watched videos, joined online communities, searching for someone who understood what you were experiencing. Yet deep inside, beneath all the confusion and exhaustion, a question began forming. What if this wasn't a problem to solve, but a puzzle to understand? What if there was a reason you were wired this way? What if all this sensitivity wasn't a curse, but a calling? The question haunted you because it implied something you weren't ready to accept. That your difference might be intentional, that your pain might have purpose, that your overwhelming experiences might be preparing you for something you couldn't yet see. Then they appeared in your life. Someone who seemed to have everything figured out on the surface: success, wealth, recognition, perhaps even billions in assets and achievements that others could only dream of. Yet something about them made your spiritual radar activate before your mind could process why. You met them in an unexpected place. Maybe it was a business conference where they were the keynote speaker, commanding the stage with stories of their empire. Or perhaps it was somewhere mundane, a coffee shop where they sat alone despite being surrounded by assistants and security. The location didn't matter. What mattered was that moment when your eyes met and something electric shot through your entire being. Their first impression was flawless. They spoke confidently about their accomplishments, their business ventures, their financial success. They had the perfect smile, the right answers, the impressive stories that commanded respect in any room. Everyone around them nodded and laughed at their jokes, hung on their every word, treated them like royalty. Yet you saw something others missed entirely. There was a crack in their facade that only you could detect. All that money, all that success, all those achievements couldn't buy what their soul was desperately crying for. Your chest tightened when you were around them, not from fear, but from recognition. Your spirit was responding to something your mind hadn't yet understood. You watched them work the room at social events, effortlessly networking, making deals with handshakes that moved millions of dollars. They had mastered the art of making everyone feel like the most important person in the conversation, yet you could see how empty each interaction left them. They were performing, not connecting. They carried an invisible weight that no amount of worldly success could lighten, while everyone else saw the perfect exterior, the luxury cars, the expensive clothes, the commanding presence, the private jets, the exclusive access to places mere mortals could never enter. You read their soul. Behind their business talk and deflection tactics, behind their expertise at saying "I'm fine," you sensed something ancient and wounded. Their success story was the kind that magazines featured on covers. Rags to riches, brilliant innovation, market domination, philanthropic endeavors that made headlines. They spoke at universities, advised governments, had their opinions quoted in financial publications, yet none of it filled the gaping hole in their spirit that grew larger with each achievement. Their jokes were too dark. Their smiles lasted 1 second too long. Their success stories felt hollow, as if they were reciting lines from a script they had memorized but never believed. When they spoke about having everything, their energy screamed that they had nothing that truly mattered. You noticed how they deflected every conversation that moved toward anything personal, how they immediately shifted to business topics whenever someone asked about their happiness. You watched them at charity galas, writing checks that could fund entire organizations, receiving awards for their generosity, making speeches about making the world a better place. The applause was thunderous, the recognition genuine, yet you could see how disconnected they were from the joy these moments should have brought. They were going through the motions of fulfillment without feeling any of it. You sensed historical pain in them, something that went deeper than current circumstances, deeper than financial stress or business pressure. This was a soul-level ache that no material achievement could touch. It was the kind of emptiness that came from losing connection to their original purpose, from accumulating everything the world said mattered while losing touch with what actually did. You noticed the small things, how they never really relaxed, even in leisure moments, how their phone was always buzzing with messages from people who needed something from them, never just to check how they were doing, how they had employees who managed their personal lives because they had forgotten how to live outside of their empire, how they could buy anything they wanted but seemed to want nothing at all. Gradually, they began to let you see behind the curtain of their success, not through grand confessions or dramatic breakdowns, but through tiny moments of vulnerability that they probably didn't even realize they were showing. A slight hesitation before answering, "How are you?" A moment of genuine confusion when you asked what they enjoyed doing for fun. A flash of something like relief when you didn't immediately ask them for money, connections, or favors. You started noticing how they talked about their wealth. It wasn't with pride or joy, but with a kind of bewildered detachment, as if they were describing someone else's life. They mentioned having more money than they could spend in 10 lifetimes, owning properties they'd never visited, having access to experiences that no longer excited them. The abundance had become a prison of its own making. They spoke about their childhood dreams sometimes, the version of themselves who had started this journey with such different intentions. They remembered wanting to make a difference, to build something meaningful, to leave a legacy that mattered. Now they weren't sure if their empire was helping the world or just adding to its problems. Every decision affected thousands of jobs, billions in market value, entire industries, yet they felt powerless to change course. They had almost convinced themselves that divine purpose had forgotten them. Despite their wealth and influence, they felt spiritually invisible, disconnected from any higher meaning. They weren't angry at God or the universe. They were spiritually numb, going through the motions of success while their souls slowly starved. They had everything the world said would make them happy, yet happiness felt like a foreign concept. Your response was inexplicable. Your logic said, they have everything anyone could want. What's the problem? Yet your soul said with absolute certainty, this is exactly why you're here. Every fiber of your being recognized that beneath all the success was a falling angel who had forgotten how to fly. You couldn't walk away. Something deeper than empathy, stronger than kindness, was keeping you anchored to their story. While others saw their wealth and wanted to get closer for personal gain, you saw their pain and wanted to get closer for their healing. You created a sacred space around them where they could finally breathe, where the perfect facade could crack just enough to let some light in. You didn't preach to them about purpose or meaning. You didn't try to fix their spiritual disconnect or suggest they give away their fortune to find peace. You simply witnessed their truth. You saw the royalty hidden beneath their material empire and the divine spark that all their success had nearly extinguished. Now comes the earth-shattering truth that changes everything you thought you knew about that encounter, about your sensitivity, about your entire existence. This was never random. You didn't just happen to be there. There was no coincidence, no luck, no accident. Something pulled you to that exact person at that precise moment with a force that operated beyond human understanding. While you thought you were simply living your life, making normal choices, following ordinary paths, you were actually being guided by invisible hands toward a divine appointment. Your spirit had signed a contract before your birth, before you ever took your first breath. This connection, this mission, this soul was written into your destiny. Every choice that led you to that moment, every seeming detour, every decision that you thought was random, was actually divine orchestration positioning you for this exact encounter. Think about it. Every job change that brought you to that city, every relationship that ended, opening your schedule for that day, every delayed flight, cancelled meeting, or last-minute invitation that put you in that exact location at that precise time. The universe was moving pieces on a chessboard you couldn't see, arranging circumstances with surgical precision. You arrived at the precise moment when they whispered into the void, "If there's any purpose left for me, send a sign." You were the answer, not to their prayer because they had stopped praying long ago, but to heaven's strategic plan. You were the response to a silent cry that only divine ears could hear. Heaven's navigation system had been guiding you to their location through every seemingly random choice you made, every path you took, every decision that led you to that moment. The timing was surgical, the precision divine. If you had arrived 5 minutes earlier, they wouldn't have been ready. 5 minutes later, the moment would have passed. Your real assignment wasn't to save them in the way you might have imagined. You weren't sent to fix their spiritual disconnection or solve their existential crisis with perfect words or brilliant insights. You were sent to remind them who they are beneath all the material accumulation, to be a mirror that reflected their forgotten divine identity. You recognized your own forgotten story in theirs, the times when you felt invisible despite being surrounded by people, the moments when you questioned your purpose despite all your efforts, the seasons when your soul felt disconnected from any higher meaning. Their billionaire emptiness reflected your own spiritual hunger in a way that pierced through every defense you had built. Your pain ran parallel to theirs, just in different packaging. Their struggle awakened memories of your own spiritual battles, your own dark nights of the soul, your own whispered prayers for signs that you mattered. While they had accumulated wealth without purpose, you had accumulated sensitivity without understanding. Both of you were carrying gifts that felt like burdens because you didn't know their true function. When you met, it was mutual ignition, one soul flickering in silence, another soul carrying fire, and when these energies connected, both flames returned to full strength. They remembered why they started their empire, not for the money, but to make a difference. You remembered why you were born with such intense sensitivity, not to suffer, but to serve. The Obsidian Inner Order isn't just another spiritual community, it's a sanctuary for the exiled, the awakened, the ones who've been gaslit for their gifts and abandoned for their truth. Every week we gather live on Zoom, real people with real faces sharing real stories of transformation. There's a former CFO who embraced their psychic abilities, a seer who broke free from religious oppression, and a healer who survived ritual abuse and found their power. Dozens more join us who understand exactly what you've been through. This is your spiritual family, never gonna give you up, never gonna let you walk through this awakening alone, never gonna scroll past your suffering like it's just content. Your exile from the ordinary world wasn't punishment, it was preparation for this, for us, for the family that chooses you back. Join the Obsidian Inner Order. Link in description. The recognition went deeper than conscious understanding. Your souls knew each other from before this lifetime, from the realm where assignments are given and contracts are signed. That's why the connection felt so immediate, so inexplicable, so impossible to ignore. You weren't meeting for the first time, you were remembering an appointment made in eternity. Think about who was connected to this billionaire. Family members who had given up on them ever finding peace. Employees whose livelihoods depended on decisions made from their spiritual emptiness. Charities and causes that received funding but no heart. Communities affected by businesses run from ego rather than purpose. Your one moment of obedience shifted all of it. They became light for their family, their employees, their community. Their transformation wasn't just personal, it was positional. When someone with that level of influence rediscovers their purpose, the ripple effects touch thousands of lives. That one conversation became a divine tipping point that altered bloodlines and broke cycles of spiritual emptiness that had plagued their lineage for generations. Their children, who had grown up with every material advantage but no spiritual foundation, suddenly had a parent who talked about meaning instead of money. Their spouse, who had felt married to a successful stranger, rediscovered the person they fell in love with before the empire consumed their partner's soul. Their employees began working for someone who cared about impact, not just profit. God knew exactly who could reach them at their darkest moment. Not the loudest voice, not the most educated mind, not the most eloquent speaker, not another billionaire who understood their world, but the most chosen. You, someone who could see past their accumulated worth to their inherent worth. All of heaven was watching this mission unfold, celebrating your obedience to a call you didn't even consciously hear. Angels were positioned around that encounter, protecting the space, ensuring nothing could interfere with the divine appointment. What looked like a random conversation was actually a cosmic event. The assignment had layers you're still discovering. Every emotion you had ever absorbed, every overwhelming experience that had trained your sensitivity, every moment of feeling different and misunderstood. It was all preparation for this precision moment when you would need to read the soul of someone whose pain was completely hidden behind success. Everything you called a burden was actually evidence of your assignment. That overwhelming sensitivity that made you feel broken, that intense emotional radar that exhausted you, that inability to ignore pain that others couldn't see, none of it was a malfunction. It was spiritual equipment designed for divine operations. Every emotion you labeled as a flaw was actually a frequency tuned perfectly for divine encounters. Your heart operates like supernatural radar, picking up signals that others can't detect. While most people move through life with basic emotional reception, you were given military-grade spiritual technology that can detect soul-level distress from across a crowded room. You don't just sense when rooms shift, you feel when souls are screaming in silence. That overwhelming feeling you get in certain environments isn't anxiety, it's your spiritual equipment alerting you to assignment opportunities. The exhaustion you feel after social gatherings isn't weakness, it's the natural result of processing spiritual information that others can't access. You're not just empathetic, you're prophetic. You receive information about people without them saying a word. You know when someone is struggling before they realize it themselves. You feel the weight of their burdens before they understand what they're carrying. You interpret the language of pain that others can't understand because you speak fluent suffering. You read the spiritual atmosphere like others read weather reports. You walk into rooms and immediately know who needs prayer, who's fighting battles, who's about to make life-changing decisions. This isn't psychology, this is prophetic intelligence gathering. You're receiving divine downloads about the people heaven wants you to reach. You carry fire, you carry breakthrough, you carry divine insight that can shift entire atmospheres without you speaking a single word. Your presence carries weight that breaks through spiritual barriers others can't even see. You weren't sent to lecture broken souls with perfect theology. You were sent to restore the spiritual atmosphere around them, simply by being present. Your presence breaks invisible chains. When you walk into spaces, things shift. Conversations become deeper, people feel safe to tell truth, walls come down, masks slip. This isn't charisma, this is anointing. People feel safe telling you their deepest traumas within minutes of meeting you, because your energy carries something sacred, something that says you can be real here. Every overwhelming emotion you've experienced was building your capacity to handle what's coming. Every moment of feeling too much was expanding your ability to process divine information. Every time you absorbed someone else's pain, you were developing the spiritual muscles needed for rescue missions that require you to enter dark places and carry people back to light. Society called your sensitivity weakness, but heaven calls it strength. You're not weak, you're wired for a type of warfare that most people never see. Every emotional overwhelm was preparing you for spiritual combat, where the weapons are love, presence and supernatural perception. Your tears aren't signs of fragility, they're intercession flowing through you for people who can't cry their own prayers. Heaven strategically places you where broken souls will find you. That's why strangers approach you in coffee shops with their life stories. That's why co-workers confess their deepest fears to you in break rooms. That's why neighbors share their marriage problems over fences. That's why people open up to you in unexpected ways. Your presence carries a frequency that gives permission for truth. You attract wounded people like a magnet attracts metal because you're designed to. This isn't bad luck or poor boundaries, it's divine positioning. Heaven uses your location as a distribution center for healing. People who need what you carry are guided to your path through their own divine navigation systems. You see the royalty hidden under people's rubble. While others see problems, you see potential. While others see broken people, you see divine beings who forgot their original design. While others see hopeless cases, you see restoration projects. This isn't naive optimism, this is prophetic vision that sees people through heaven's eyes. The spiritual weight you carry comes with spiritual authority. You don't just feel deeply, you influence deeply. Your prayers carry more weight because you pray from the place of shared pain. Your words carry more power because they come from genuine understanding. Your presence carries more impact because it's backed by heaven's assignment. You're not just carrying sensitivity, you're carrying solutions. Every person whose pain you've absorbed has equipped you to minister to someone else facing similar battles. Every emotion you've processed has prepared you to guide others through their own healing. You're not just feeling their pain, you're learning how to heal it. Your nervous system isn't broken, it's calibrated for supernatural operation. The same sensitivity that exhausts you in normal settings becomes supernatural strength in assignment moments. When heaven needs someone to detect spiritual need and respond with divine love, your equipment activates and you become unstoppable. This moment, right now, is your summons. If something inside you just woke up, if there's a quiet fire burning in your chest that you can't explain, your spirit is remembering what your mind forgot. Every strange experience you've questioned now makes perfect sense. The divine confirmation you've been seeking is happening right now. You can see the spiritual setup behind every encounter that confused you, every pull toward broken people that seemed to cost you more than it gave. The veil between the natural and spiritual world is lifting. Assignments that were hidden are becoming clear. You are a strategy in motion, a weapon deployed by heaven with surgical precision. You can no longer walk through life feeling powerless or apologizing for who you are. You now see every interaction as potentially sacred, every encounter as a possible divine assignment. Your spiritual equipment is fully activated. Stop shrinking to make others comfortable. Stop dimming your light to fit into spaces that were never designed for your level of spiritual intensity. Rise now. Walk differently. Speak differently. Move with the boldness of someone who knows they were hand-selected for missions that others can't even perceive. Fear of what others think becomes irrelevant when you know who sent you. Every step forward is now intentional and guided. You stop trying to fit in and start standing out on purpose. You speak with the confidence of heaven's representative. You see people through divine eyes, not human judgment. Everything looks different when you understand you're on assignment. You're no longer afraid of being too much for people, because you know that those who are meant to receive what you carry will recognize it, and those who aren't ready will naturally step away. Everything until now was training. This wasn't a one-time mission. This was your activation for what's approaching. Heaven is already positioning your next divine encounter. Another soul is being prepared, and you're being strategically placed to intersect with their story. The stakes are higher this time. The next soul that's coming isn't just broken, they're chosen too, but they've forgotten their identity. You're being prepared to help other chosen ones remember who they are. Your assignments are evolving from rescuing individuals to awakening entire networks of people who carry divine assignments but don't know it yet. What's coming will require everything you've learned about your spiritual sensitivity, your divine timing, your ability to see past surface appearances into soul realities. You're moving into spiritual mentorship. You'll guide others through their own awakening process, helping them understand their sensitivity, their divine assignments, their role in heaven's strategy for earth. Your obedience creates pathways for others to follow. Every mission you complete successfully opens doors for other chosen ones to step into their assignments with greater confidence. Your presence will begin shifting atmospheres in bigger spaces. Your influence will extend beyond your immediate circle into global impact that you can't yet imagine. Use this time to strengthen your spiritual muscles. Your sensitivity will become even more refined. You'll operate with greater spiritual authority. The training wheels are coming off. If something eternal inside you just locked into place, if your soul is roaring yes to everything you've heard, then you already know what comes next. Let heaven see that you understand your assignment. Let darkness tremble at your awakening. Stop hiding your calling. Stop hiding your calling. The world needs what you carry more than you need to stay comfortable. Share this message with someone whose light is flickering. You might be their confirmation, their sign that they're not alone, their reminder that heaven sees them. Say yes to everything heaven has prepared for you. Accept the missions that are coming. Embrace the responsibility of carrying fire in a world that's spiritually starving. You can never see yourself as ordinary again. Every encounter is now viewed through the lens of possible divine purpose. You are a carrier of divine fire wherever you go. Walk in the confidence of someone heaven trusts with its most sensitive missions. Move like the one who was sent, because you were and you always will be. Your assignments will never end. they will only expand. Your influence will only grow. Your spiritual authority will only increase as you prove faithful with what you've been given. Stop apologizing for who you are. Stop trying to numb the gift. Start walking in the boldness of someone who knows they were assigned before they were born. The activation has begun. The training is complete. The real mission starts now. Go carry the fire. Shift atmospheres. Save the souls that heaven sends your way. Remember who you are. Chosen one. You were sent. You were equipped. You were positioned. Now go fulfill your assignment.